I came home from church on a Sunday in October and found that my bedroom had been emptied while I was gone. My clothes, my hairbrush, the photographs on my dresser, my husband's reading glasses that I still kept folded on the nightstand 4 years after he passed. All of it had been carried down the hall to the small back bedroom, the one we used to use for storage, the one with the window that won't quite close. My daughter was standing in my kitchen when I came in, drinking coffee out of my cup. She didn't even turn around all the way. She just said, "We thought you'd be more comfortable back there, Mama. Out of the way." Out of the way. In the house her father built with his own 2 hands. What she didn't know, standing there drinking my coffee like she'd paid for the beans, was that this house was never going to be hers. Not one board of it. My Raymond had seen to that, years before he died, in a way that not a single person in that family ever bothered to read. And by the time they understood what he'd done, it was the 3 of them carrying boxes down my front steps, not me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me slow down and tell it right. My name is Ruth. I'm 70 years old, and I live at the end of a gravel road outside Boone, North Carolina, where the Blue Ridge folds up blue and soft against the sky, and the fog sits in the valley most mornings until the sun burns it off. I was a nurse for 41 years, most of them at the county hospital up the mountain. I have held hands that were dying and hands that were just being born. And I learned a long time ago that you can tell everything about a person by how they treat someone who can't do anything for them. I worked nights for most of my career because the night shift paid a little more and we needed the little more. There's a particular kind of quiet in a hospital at 3 in the morning and a particular kind of person who's awake in it. And over 4 decades, I sat with a great many of them. Frightened people, lonely people, old men whose children never came. I held a lot of hands that nobody else would hold. I learned to read a face the way some people read the sky for weather. And I learned that the people who get taken advantage of in this life are almost never the foolish ones. They're the kind ones, the ones who give. I had seen it happen to 100 patients before it ever happened to me. I just never thought I'd be the one in the bed, so to speak. My Raymond was a quiet man, but he was never a careless one. Near the end of his life, he did one thing I didn't fully understand at the time. I understand it now. It's the reason I'm sitting in my own kitchen tonight, telling you this, instead of in a back bedroom with a window that won't close. I'll come to it, but you have to know what came first, because the giving always comes first. That's how they get you. Raymond and I married in 1974. He was a cabinet maker, the kind that's nearly gone now. A man who could look at a board and see the chair inside it. He built this house over 3 summers, working his regular jobs all week, and then out here every Saturday with his shirt off and a pencil behind his ear. And I'd bring him sweet tea and sit on a sawhorse and watch a house come up out of a hillside, 1 board at a time. He built a workshop out back before he finished our own bedroom, because he said a man needs somewhere to make things or he forgets why he's working at all. To the end of his days, that shop smelled of cut cedar and machine oil, and the coffee he kept warm on a hot plate. He made the porch swing we courted on after we were already married, because he said a man should keep courting his wife, even once he's caught her. He carved our daughter's name into the bottom of her cradle, so that someday her own children might lie in it and not know whose hands had made it. Tammy, our only one. I loved being a mother more than I have ever loved anything. And I was good at it, the way I was good at nursing, by paying attention. When Tammy was small, she had the croup so bad one winter that I sat up with her in the bathroom with the hot shower running 6 nights in a row, breathing the steam, just so she could sleep an hour at a time. When she wanted to be a cheerleader, I sewed the uniform myself because we couldn't buy it. When she totaled her first car at 19 and was too ashamed to call her father, she called me, and I drove out at 2 in the morning and brought her home and never said a word about it to anybody. I didn't tell those stories to make myself sound like a saint. I'm telling them so you understand what was poured into that girl. Every drop I had, and I would pour it all again tomorrow. That's not regret. That's just what it is to be somebody's mother. Raymond got sick the autumn after he turned 73. It was in his pancreas, and with that, there isn't much anyone can do. And being a nurse only meant I knew exactly how the road went, every mile of it, before we got there. That's a hard kind of knowing. I cared for him at home, every day, for 7 months. I'd cared for strangers my whole working life, and now I got to care for the one person I'd have traded all of them for. I learned his medicines the way I'd learned 1,000 patients before him. Except this time, it was my own hand shaking when I wrote the times down. Tammy came on Sundays, mostly. She'd sit a little while and then say the hospice smell upset her and go wait in the car. I told myself everybody grieves in their own way. I still tell myself that, on the good days. He died in our bedroom, the front one, in the spring. With the dogwood blooming outside the window, he'd framed himself. I was holding his hand. Near the end, he wasn't saying much, but he came up clear for a moment, the way they sometimes do. And he looked at me and said, the house was good and strong, and would stand 100 years, and to mind it for him. I told him I would. I didn't understand then that he was telling me something more than that. I do now. Let me pause here a moment, because I've been talking a while, and I'd like to know who's keeping me company tonight. Whatever town you're listening from, however far away, put it down below where I can see it. A woman who's lived alone a few years learns to treasure a full room, even one she can't see. There. Now, where was I? The first crack came about a year after the funeral, and like most things that end up breaking you, it arrived dressed as a kindness. Tammy and her husband Dale had hit a rough patch. Dale had run an auto shop in town for years, Dale's Automotive, with his name up on the sign, and it had gone under. Slow and then all at once. The way those things do when a man borrows against tomorrow to cover yesterday one too many times. There were debts. I didn't know how deep. Not then. I only knew my daughter's voice when she called me one evening, because a mother knows her child's voice the way she knows her own heartbeat. And that night, Tammy's voice had the particular thinness it used to get when she was a girl and had done something she was scared to tell me. She cried on the phone. She said they were about to lose their place, that they had nowhere to go, that she didn't know what else to do, and could they come stay with me, just for a little while, just until they got back on their feet. What was I going to say? She was my daughter. The house had 4 bedrooms and only me rattling around in it, talking to a man's photograph at supper time. I didn't hesitate for even a breath. I said, of course. I said, come home. I said, this house has always had room for you and it always will. I made up the beds myself, with the good sheets, and I baked, because that's what my mother did when somebody was coming home hurt, and her mother before her. I thought I was opening my door to my family in their hour of need. I have gone over that evening many times since. I would still say yes. I want you to understand that, even knowing everything. A mother says, "Come home." It's the rest of them who decide what to do once they're through the door. I want to be fair about Dale, even now, because the truth has more than one side, and I've had time to think on all of them. The week they moved in, Dale carried every heavy box up those stairs without being asked. And when he was done, he stood in Raymond's workshop a long while, just looking at the tools on the wall. And he said, real quiet, "Ray kept a good shop." And his voice caught when he said it. There was a decent man in there somewhere. I saw him that day. I want you to remember I saw him because of what he did later. For the first few months, it was almost nice. And that's the part that still catches in my throat. Tammy cooked again, the way she had as a girl, and the kitchen smelled like my own mother's on a Sunday. Dale fixed the porch step that had wobbled since Raymond passed, and he was handy, I'll give him that. My grandson, Tyler, who was 17 and gentle in a way that seemed to skip his father's generation entirely, started sitting with me in the evenings. He'd ask me about his granddaddy, ask me to tell him the names of Raymond's tools and what each one was for, and I'd light up like a lamp telling him. I thought, foolish as it sounds now, that maybe something good might grow up out of all that loss. That maybe a house that had gone too quiet was meant to be full again. I let my guard all the way down. That's the thing about a kind heart. It keeps opening the door, right up until the day it learns better. Then the visits to my room started. It was small things at first. Dale, asking one night at supper, just curious, what the property taxes ran on a place like this, and whether I'd ever had it appraised, and did I know land out this way was going for more than people realized, with the developers buying up mountain lots. I said I didn't keep track of such things. He nodded and let it sit. But I'd spent 41 years reading faces over hospital beds, and I knew the difference between a man making conversation and a man taking inventory. After that, the house started changing around me without my say. Tammy boxed up my good china to keep it safe, and I never saw it again. She took down the framed photographs in the front hall, mine and Raymond's wedding among them, and replaced them with her own. And when I asked, she said the old ones were kind of depressing. Mama, no offense. Dale started using Raymond's workshop. That I might have allowed. A man needs a place to work. But one Saturday I walked out there and the wall was bare. The tools were gone. Raymond's planes and chisels and the good handsaw his own father had given him, Dale had sold them. To a fellow in town, for less than they were worth. To make a payment on something. When I asked him about it, he didn't even look ashamed. He said, "Ruth, they were just sitting there. Dead weight. Dead weight. 40 years of my husband's hands. Sold for a car payment. Called dead weight." That was the night I stopped sleeping well. And it got worse from there. Each thing a little sharper than the last. I became, in my own home, something between a house guest and the help. Tammy made up a chore list and stuck it to my refrigerator with a magnet, and my name was on it, in her handwriting, next to the laundry and the supper dishes. When Dale had men over to watch the football, I was expected to cook for them, and then take my plate back to the bedroom so I wouldn't be in the middle of things. One of those evenings I came out for a glass of water, and I heard Dale, in the front room, in front of all of them, call me the old lady who came with the house. They laughed. He laughed. I stood in my own hallway with an empty glass, and I did not let them hear me go back down it. They moved my doctor's appointments without telling me, to days that suited their schedule. They started answering my telephone. When my friend Gladys from church called to check on me, Tammy told her I was napping, 3 times running, until Gladys stopped calling. I found out later that was the point. A woman with no visitors is easier to manage. I had nursed enough lonely old people to know that the first thing the world does when it decides you don't matter anymore is quietly close the doors between you and everyone who'd take your side. Then one Tuesday, a stranger came up my gravel road in a clean white car. A young man in a sport coat with a clipboard, and he started walking the perimeter of my house, taking photographs. The porch, the view of the ridge, the acreage out back. I came out and asked him, polite as I could, what he thought he was doing. And he looked confused and said he was the realtor, that he was just getting some preliminary photos for the listing. And didn't I know? The listing of my house. Dale had called a real estate agent about selling my home, out from under me, while I was inside it, and hadn't troubled himself to mention it. The young man saw my face and went pale, and apologized, and got back in his car in a hurry. I stood in my own yard a long while after he'd gone, looking at the house Raymond raised up board by board, and I understood, finally and all the way down, that they did not intend to share my home. They intended to sell it, and me along with it, like a piece of furniture that came in the deal. Then came the Sunday I told you about. Church, and the back bedroom, and my coffee in my daughter's hand. I didn't make a scene. I've never been a woman who makes scenes. I carried what I could of my own things back down the hall myself, slow, with my bad hip, while Tammy stood in the doorway telling me I was being difficult and making this harder than it has to be. I put Raymond's reading glasses back on the front room nightstand where they belonged, and I put his photograph back beside them, the one she'd taken down. And then I sat down in his chair, the one he used to read his Western paperbacks in, and I was quiet for a long time. I'd like to tell you I cried. I didn't, not then. What I did was something I'd done 100 times at 3 in the morning at a nurse's station when the news was bad and the family was falling apart, and somebody in the room had to keep their head. I stopped feeling, just for a while, and I started thinking. I asked myself the only questions that matter in an emergency. What is actually true here? What do I actually have? And what is the next right thing to do? Because here is what they had all forgotten, or maybe never troubled to learn. They thought a soft-spoken 70-year-old widow who'd let them walk all over her for a year was a soft-spoken 70-year-old widow who would let them walk all over her forever. They mistook my patience for weakness. Those are not the same thing. Patience is just strength that isn't in a hurry. I had been patient because I loved my daughter, and I kept hoping she'd remember who she was. I had not been patient because I had no choice. There is a world of difference between those two. And Dale and Tammy were about to learn exactly how wide that world is. The next morning, while they were both out, I drove my old Subaru into town, slow on the switchbacks, to a small office I'd noticed on the courthouse square, where a young legal aid attorney named Paula helped folks who didn't have much money and a great deal of trouble. I sat across from her, and I told her the whole of it, plain and in order, the way I'd give a report at the start of a shift. The tools, the chore list, the back bedroom, the man who called me the old lady who came with the house. She listened without interrupting, and when I was done, she was quiet for a moment, and then she asked me the question I'd been dreading. She asked whose name was on the deed. And that was when I told her the part I hadn't told anyone, the thing Raymond had done that I finally, fully understood. When Raymond built this house, he put the deed in my name, only my name. He did the same with the 22 acres it sits on. I'd asked him about it at the time. Why not both of us? And he'd just said, "Because I might go first, Ruthie, and I won't have you depending on anybody's good nature." He'd grown up watching his own mother get eased off her land by a brother-in-law after his father died. Watched her end her days in a rented room while another family slept in the house she'd raised her children in. He swore that would never be me. So he made certain, in black ink at the county courthouse, that this place was mine, solely and completely, and that no child, no in-law, no one on this earth had a claim to a single inch of it. I'd signed those papers beside him 30 years ago and half forgotten they existed. Tammy and Dale had simply assumed, the way people do, that a family home belongs to the family. It never did. It belonged to me. It had only ever belonged to me. Because a quiet man with a pencil behind his ear had loved me enough, 30 years early, to make sure of it. Paula went very still. She read the deed twice. Then she set it down and she looked at me and she said, "Ruth, do you understand what this means? They have no lease. They pay you no rent. In the eyes of the law, they are guests in your home. And a guest, no matter who they're related to, can be asked to leave." I told her I understood it perfectly. Then I asked her the only question that still mattered to me. I asked, "How do I do it lawfully, without anybody getting hurt, and without me having to stop being able to look at myself in the mirror?" And we got to work. For the next 2 weeks, I lived 2 lives. And I will tell you, those were the hardest 2 weeks of the whole business. Harder in their way than the night with the pen. By day, I went on being the agreeable old woman they expected. I cooked when the chore list said to cook. I took my plate to the back bedroom when the men came over. I said, "Yes, Tammy," and "All right, Dale," and I swallowed every word I wanted to say, because Paula had told me the one thing that could ruin everything was for them to suspect what was coming and do something rash. Like talk me into that trust again on a bad afternoon, or worse. So I smiled. I have smiled at a great many things in 41 years of nursing that I did not feel like smiling at. I knew how, and by night, after they'd gone to sleep, I'd sit at the kitchen table with a single lamp on and go through it all, careful as a medication count. The deed, the notice Paula was drawing up, the number of days it had to give them, the exact words the law required, every piece in its place. A nurse doesn't run to the emergency. A nurse moves fast, without ever once looking like she's hurrying. I'd had a lifetime of practice. They never saw a thing. But I have to tell you about the night it nearly all came apart. Because nothing worth having comes easy. And this didn't either. About 2 weeks into quietly getting my papers in order, Dale sat me down at the kitchen table one evening, all gentle, and slid a document across to me. He'd printed it neat. He said the property taxes were a mess, and the only way to simplify things so they could help me handle it was for me to sign the place over into a trust that he and Tammy would manage. For my own good, he said, so I wouldn't have to worry. He put a pen in my hand. Tammy stood behind him nodding, her eyes wet, saying, "We just want to take care of you, Mama." And I will be honest with you. I almost signed it. I sat there with that pen, and they were both looking at me with such warmth, such practiced, patient warmth. And some tired old part of me just wanted the fighting to be over. I wanted to believe my daughter loved me more than she wanted my land. I wanted it so badly, that for a moment I could feel myself deciding to believe it, the way you decide to believe a fever will break. My hand was on the paper. I had started to write the R. Then I read it, the way I read every chart, every label, every medication order, for 41 years. Because in my profession, a misread word could kill somebody, and the habit never left me. And down near the bottom, in the small print, Dale didn't think a tired old woman would bother with, was the word convey. Not manage, not assist with, convey. That document didn't put my house in their care. It signed it over to them, free and clear, that very night, while they stood over me, telling me they only wanted to help. I set the pen down, very gently. My heart was going hard, but my hand was steady, the way it always got steady in an emergency. 41 years of emergencies will do that for you. I said my hand was tired, and I'd look at it properly in the morning, with my reading glasses, when I was fresh. Dale's jaw went tight, but he smiled, and he said, "Sure, Ruth, no rush." There was a great deal of rush. He just didn't know yet that I knew it. I called Paula before breakfast. 3 days later, it was done. All of it lawful, all of it on paper. Every step the way a careful woman does a thing. Paula had drawn up a formal notice for Tammy and Dale to vacate, the kind the law requires, with the right number of days and the right language and my deed attached, so there could be no argument about whose house it was. And I had given a copy of Dale's little trust document, the one with the word convey hidden at the bottom, to the sheriff's office. Because trying to trick an elderly person into signing away her home is not just ugly. It has a name, and it's a crime. I waited until a Saturday, when they were all home. I asked Tyler, my grandson, to come sit on the porch with me a while first, and I told him, just him, what was about to happen, and why, and that none of it was his fault, and none of it changed how I felt about him. That boy cried and held my hand and said, "Grandma, I knew something was wrong. I'm sorry I didn't say anything." I told him he was 17, and it was never a child's job to fix what the grown people broke. Then I sent him to a friend's house, because what came next, a boy shouldn't have to watch. I gave the notice to Tammy myself, in the kitchen, in my own hand. I didn't shout, I didn't weep, I just said, "This is my house. It has always been my house. Your father put it in my name 30 years ago because he knew, somehow, that a day like this might come. You have until the end of the month to find somewhere to go." Tammy read it and went pale and said it had to be a mistake, that a house belongs to a family, that I couldn't do this to my own blood. Dale went red and then white. He started in about everything they'd done for me, the porch step, the heavy boxes, all of it, as though a year of taking over my home were an invoice I owed them. He raised his voice. He told me I was confused, that I didn't understand my own affairs, that a judge would see an old woman who couldn't be trusted to make her own decisions and would hand the whole thing right back to them. For one breath, he thought that might still work. I watched him reach for it like a man grabbing at a rope already out of his hands. I let him finish. I have a great deal of patience, as I've said. Then I said, quiet as anything, "Dale, I have the document you put in front of me last week. The one with the word convey at the bottom, that you hoped I wouldn't read. I made copies. The sheriff's office has one. Trying to trick an elderly person into signing away her home isn't just a low thing to do. It has a name in the law, and it's a crime. And they were very interested to hear about it. So I would think hard, very hard, about whether you really want to stand in my kitchen and tell me I'm the one who's confused." The kitchen went silent. He had no more speeches after that. There is a particular silence that falls on a person when the floor they were standing on turns out to belong to somebody else. I had been on the giving end of bad news my whole career. I knew that silence well. I just had never expected to deliver it to my own daughter's husband. Across the table, my Raymond built. "I'd like to tell you, my daughter broke down and begged my forgiveness right there. She didn't. Not that day. She packed in a fury, slamming things, calling me cruel and crazy and worse. And I stood at the window and watched the three of them, well, the two of them, carry their boxes down my front steps and load up Dale's truck. The same steps Dale had carried boxes up a year before, when there was still a decent man flickering somewhere in him. I thought about that man as they drove off. I hoped, for Tammy's sake and Tyler's, that he might find his way back to being him someday. But that was no longer mine to fix. The house was very quiet when they were gone, quieter than it had been since Raymond died. I won't pretend that quiet didn't ache. You can do the right thing and still grieve what it cost you. Both of those are allowed to be true at once. Here is what I did next. And it's the part that finally let me sleep through the night again. I had Raymond's workshop cleaned out, the cobwebs swept and the wiring fixed, and the wide doors he'd hung rehung where one had come loose. The tools Dale sold. Most of those I couldn't get back. But I went to see the fellow in town who'd bought them, and I bought back what he still had, including the handsaw Raymond's own father had carried. And I paid more than it was worth, and I didn't care. Then I bought new besides, good ones, the kind Raymond would have run his thumb along the edge of and nodded at without saying anything, which from him was the highest praise there was. And then I called the high school. I told them I had a real wood shop sitting empty on my property, and a notion. 2 afternoons a week now. Any young person who wants to learn to work with their hands the way almost nobody teaches them anymore can come out to my place and learn it. There's a retired shop teacher from over in Valle Crucis who runs it, and I keep the coffee on and the cookies coming, and I sit in the corner on a stool and watch. Tyler comes every single time. He's getting good, real good. He's building a cedar box, dovetailed corners and all, slow and careful. And one evening, I asked him who it was for, and he went a little red and said it was for his mother, for whenever she was ready to come back into my life. I had to step outside for a minute after he said that. I told him I'd keep the porch light on for that day, however long it took. And I meant it. The smell of cut cedar is back in that shop after 4 years of it being gone. Some evenings, when the kids have left and the lights going gold over the ridge, I sit on the porch swing Raymond made and listen to the quiet where their sawing used to be. And I swear I can feel him out there, pleased with the lot of it. He always did say a shop with no one in it is just a room. He'd like knowing it's full again. I'm 70 years old. I sleep in my own front bedroom, in the bed my husband died in and lived in and loved me in for nearly 50 years, with his reading glasses on the nightstand where they belong and his photograph beside them. Tammy and I are not what we were, and I won't pretend the road back has been quick. Dale, last I heard, is still Dale, and I pray for him more than I'd admit to his face. But Tyler has been building a bridge between his mother and me, slow, board by board, the patient way his granddaddy taught him. And last month, she telephoned me herself, with no one making her. We talked for 9 minutes about nothing in particular. I have replayed those 9 minutes more times than I can count. It's a start. I'm a patient woman, I believe I've mentioned that. People believe the cruelest thing is to be betrayed by your own child. It isn't, quite. The cruelest thing is that you go right on loving them anyway, even as you're showing them the door. Because a mother's heart doesn't have an off switch and wouldn't be worth much if it did. I told you at the start that Raymond did one quiet thing near the end that I didn't understand until later. Now you know what it was. He couldn't stop people from being who they turned out to be. He couldn't make our daughter choose right. But he could make sure that no matter who tried, and no matter how gently they smiled while they did it, this old woman would always have a door that was hers to lock. That was his last gift to me. A place that no one could take. Because long ago, in black ink, he made certain it was mine. So if there's anyone in your life right now telling you that your home isn't really yours, that you'd be more comfortable out of the way, that you should just sign here and stop worrying your head about it, I want you to do one thing for me. Read it before you sign it. Read every line, the way your life depends on it. Because sometimes it does. And then keep your name on what is yours. If this story sat with you, stay a while, and I'll tell you another one soon. And tell me down below, would you have given your daughter a second chance? And where in this world are you keeping me company from tonight? I read every single one. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you again before long.